Hello everyone, and welcome to my inaugural video. I am the Canadian Carnivore. And let me tell you about my situation. So, I actually originally went on the Carnivore Diet a long time ago. Maybe 8 years ago, sounds about right. And at the time, I did really well. I went down to like 180 pounds. It was some great health. And I was on it for like 6, 7 months, and then I moved away from it. So now I'll fast forward to today, and I'm like 166 kilos. I am just super obese. Anyway, so I adopted the carnivore diet again about 5 days ago. I had one day where I drank like 5 Red Bulls with sugar in them. So other than that, I've been pretty good. And So here's what I'm eating today as my second meal of the day. If you can see that, it's basically just pork belly, fried pork, possibly some pork chop in there as well. Let me see. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, basically fried pork anyway. So yeah, that's a typical meal, carnivore meal, and I'm going to be eating the carnivore diet, very strict. So basically, what I can eat is any animal and any meat byproduct. So it can be called a zero carb diet. It can be called a carnivore diet. Basically, I can eat steak, chicken, pork. Can also eat butter, cheese, even sour cream and cream cheese. Although as you get into the dairy, it gets increasingly dicey. There's milk, which technically an animal byproduct, but high in carbs, high in sugar. So the best way to go is to just eat steak, literally just rare steak, and drink water, like just very ultra simple. So why eat the carnivore diet? So there's some theories about it. Basically, carbs are bad for you. Carbs are unnecessary. They cause you to gain weight, and there's conflicting theories. So one of the pioneers of the carnivore diet was a man named Owley Stanley. Very interesting life story. He was like the front man for the Grateful Dead, and also one of the main LSD producers in the United States. And he ate a carnivore diet from most of his life. He got the idea reading about a man named Wilhelmer Stephenson, who was a Swedish Canadian explorer. He went to live with the Inuit and discovered they were eating a diet of meat, saturated fat, and had very good cardiovascular health. So it was quite the perplexing situation. Um, so over the last maybe 50 years or so, there's been the so-called war on fat, and it became conventional wisdom that saturated fat was bad for you. And now there's some evidence that's challenging that claim. I think it's very important to understand that the scientific knowledge of the day does not always represent, is not always more accurate than what we so-called used to know 50 years ago or 100 years ago. That is to say that over time, progress is inevitably made. But it's a series of zigs and zags as opposed to a steady progression onwards and upwards into the light. So what happens is, and this was written about by Calhoun. He said that Thomas Kuhn. He said he wrote about the structure of scientific revolutions. He said that basically what happens is scientists get locked into a paradigm, and they never really escape that paradigm, they what happens is they just remain there, trapped in that paradigm, until they reach a crisis point where the errors in the evidence keep bubbling up and bubbling up. A small amount you can ignore. You can say, oh, maybe the data was bad, but eventually you get to this point where there's so many errors that you have to sort of reject that and cast around and find a new paradigm. So an example of this, I guess, would be Keynesian economics in the economics realm, which actually it's still dominant today, although at the academic level they've pretty much written it off. But within the public discourse, the newspapers, and even among many economists today, even the ones who say that they've sort of abandoned the Keynesian paradigm, it's still very evident in their analysis that they haven't. So Keynesianism was sort of a detour, a wrong turn. Sorry, actually, a wrong turn, and it set the science back, 100 years, and we're just now starting to recover and challenge that narrative. So that could definitely happen, especially in the softer sciences like nutrition and the social sciences. So my contention, basically, that the optimal diet for human health is a carnivorous one. That carbs are bad for you, and they're bad for you because when you eat carbs, they convert to glucose, which is then stored on your body as adipose tissue, body fat, and the conversion process requires insulin, which is badly tissue damaging. So I'm going to be eating the carnivore diet, and I'm going to be taking weekly measurements of my weight. I'm now at 167 kilograms, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if my vitals improve. Probably I'll eat about a kilogram of meat a day, depending. I'm going to be trying to focus on beef for the most part, but I'm eating pork as well, even chicken, eggs, cheese, maybe a little milk, but not very much. Mostly, I am drinking coffee, but other than that, yeah. So welcome to my channel, and please subscribe if you want to stay tuned to my progress and see, how this diet works. I'm going to be sharing recipe suggestions, tips. It's very important to isolate yourself, especially at the start. The first few days, like anything, that's the hardest. You don't want to expose yourself to any temptations. So what I did the first few days, basically just locked myself in this room, and you gotta. It's very difficult to overcome habits of a lifetime, but well, let me tell you about my personal story in my life. I was overweight since I was a child anyway, and I do have some nerve damage in my leg, which makes it difficult to stay more active. But I can walk and everything like that. Anyway, so my whole life overweight, and actually there was one point, maybe I was in my 20s. I was maybe 24 or something, and I did, through basically just dieting and a lot of low intensive cardio, I did manage to lose some weight and get in better shape, although still probably a little overweight. So that was one period, and I was just doing a standard low-cal diet, and then a whole lot of exercise, and then as I said, maybe 10 years later, something like that, 8 or 9 years later, I hit upon this carnivore diet. I read actually some forum postings by Owley Stanley, the guy I was telling you about, the guys with the Grateful Dead, and he was a lifelong carnivore, and he presented his case very well. I thought, well, I'll try it out, and I've always been a big meat eater, so I tried it out, and and I ate that way for 6 or 8 months. I was really devoted to it. I was very, very strict, like strict carnivore, only beef, basically, like very strict, eggs. And I just kind of broke all the time, which helped. Don't have a lot of money, and I can't spend it all on food. So, yeah, I mean, I got down 180 pounds. I was in great shape. Everything was good. And then I ended up, yeah, I just started eating whatever I wanted, and carbs and ice cream, and I guess my diet just really went to hell. And over the years, I just started gaining weight and gaining weight, and now I'm in this extreme shape where it's a big problem. So hopefully over the next year, I'm optimistic. If I stick with this diet, I will lose all my weight and go back to a normal body mass. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to detail everything. So this morning I ate what I had. I had hamburger, like just ground beef formed into a patty with cheese. I had some egg. Maribel, what did I have for breakfast? Yeah, come here. We'll get Maribel to what did I have for breakfast?
Egg and patties.
Egg and patties? Anything else? Just egg and patties, apparently. That's my fiance, Maribel. She's a little shy, doesn't want to come on the camera, but beautiful Filipino woman. So egg and patties for breakfast, and then now I got huge plate of roast pork. And so the only rule with this diet, very simple but very strict at the same time, is you can eat anything that's meat. Anything that's meat or an animal byproduct. So meat, butter, cheese, eggs, steak, pork chop, chicken drumstick, chicken thigh, bacon, pork belly, ground beef, ground pork, roast, but nothing that's got carbs, no sweets, nothing that is an animal. So it's very strict. Zero carb is basically the idea. You only want to eat protein and fat, and you don't have to eat offal. You don't have to eat liver or whatever if you don't want to. I do want to try some beef liver just because I've heard it's the most nutritious food in the world. So I'm not a fan of it, but might have some micronutrients I need. And ideally, you want to eat mostly rare steak. Steak, according to Owley Stanley, is a complete food. That's all you need. And it's better rare because the more you cook it, the more you denature the protein, which I don't know, I guess that's bad. I don't even know what that is. And you also destroy the micronutrients, which are obviously vital for your long-term health. So, yeah, I've had previous experience with this diet, great success. There's a community of carnivore, zero carb people on the internet. A lot of people have had success with this diet, and personally, I enjoy it. And you don't have to restrict. You don't have to count calories. You don't have to restrict what you're eating, although you will sort of naturally. When you've had enough, and some people struggle at the start, of course, calculating that. But yeah, so that's where I'm at, and thank you for checking out my video. Please subscribe. I'm going to be giving probably daily updates on what I'm eating, my success so far, if I have any failures, then maybe like weekly weigh-ins, and I'm going to go over different recipes and probably show some cooking, for those of you that want to try implementing this or even just moving towards a more meat diet. We're going to be talking about the economic and the environmental effects of an all-meat diet, and we'll get into that. Maybe I'll interview some zero-carb fellow carnivore people, and yeah, thank you so much for checking out my channel. And please, please do subscribe, like, share, etc. You know, let me know what you think. If you're not a hater, I don't really appreciate the haters if you are a hater, but whatever, this is the internet, so most of you are probably going to be haters, but what can you do? Yeah, that's all for now. Canadian Carnivore out.